I am calling everybody to the dinner table because it is time we had a conversation about Bam Adebayo as a family. But before then, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to After the Buzzer. I'm your host, Couper Moorhead, and today we are talking very simply about Bam. Look, I think, in some ways this is a long time coming. I don't like building narratives and forming conversations solely around what people are talking about online because that can be a smaller bubble than we think it is. And also the online spaces it's just a place for people to vent, and that is great. That's good. Nothing wrong with that. But this has been going on for years now, and I believe there is a fundamental misunderstanding of Bam as a player. And now when I talk about players, when I'm, how they're playing, who they are, all that, I think much of this comes down to any conversation about a player is who they are versus what they're being asked to do. You can label Bam whatever you want. If you want to call him a franchise player, sure, yes, he's a franchise player. He's most certainly a franchise leader and a captain, but if you're calling him a franchise player because you are assigning him the role of a number one scorer, of a number one offensive option, I think it's important for everybody to realize that he is not being asked to do that or be that. If he was, the offense would be designed around that concept. It is not. This is a democratic offense, perhaps the most democratic offensive system of Bam's entire career, which is why his usage rate is at a career low since he became a full-time starter in 2019-20. It is still an offense that needs shot creation. Without many screens, those have been ticking up. Pick and roll usage has been ticking up recently, with Tyler Hero and Davion Mitchell soaking up the majority of those possessions. But even with those ticking up, it's still by far the fewest pick and rolls in the league. The offense it's about players being given proper spacing to attack one-on-one matchups. The Heat are using the second most isolations in the past 15 years, by far the most in the league this season. They only trail like the James Harden Houston Rockets, which basically their entire offense was designed around isolations. So to make it all work, Bam and Khalil Ware, they have to provide spacing for the offense to work, for drives and one-on-one attacks to happen. You can't have people driving into a clogged paint all the time. You have to, provide space, which is why Bam's three-point rate has skyrocketed well beyond career highs. The makes from three have been ticking up recently, and we have to remember that last year, the last few months of the season, he finished over 40% from the three-point line. But 2 years ago, threes weren't even in the conversation really with Bam. 2 years ago, at the end of the season, he started taking a few, and we're like, whoa, where did this come from? And now he's taking a ton per game, okay? That's been a big change. Which gets us to shot quality. This is a real statistic. If we've talked about it before, but if you're not familiar with it, we have the tracking data from the cameras. They track the distance of your shots, whether they're contested, what kind of a pass you're getting from them. There's all sorts of layers to what kind of shots you're getting. And then from that, they take the league averages of what those shots are and puts together shot quality, what you are expected to shoot based on the shots you're getting. Bam's shot quality right now is at a career low. Not just that. Bam's shot quality on potentially assisted shots, the shots that are created for him, are also at a career low. In other words, in this offense that Miami is running, which has been great for some of the guys on the team and has been a little bit up or down, but was a needed change after what they were running before was clearly not working, especially in the playoffs. But within this offense, Bam has had fewer high-value shots created for him than ever before. Now the team still needs him to create offense. It's just a lot of it is on an island more often than not. And because he's setting fewer screens and handoffs, he's on an island against like-sized guys. He's getting fewer of those matchups or mismatches that were a key component of the offense 3 or 4 years ago when they wanted to get a lot of mismatches for isolations. Within all that, has he also slumped? Yes. That'll happen to everybody. When you slump, there's a magnifying glass on you, especially when it coincides with the team losing games. He may be shaking free of that slump. There has been uptick in percentages lately. By the time you see this video, maybe the slump is something of a thing of the past. Remember, once upon a time, Duncan Robinson slumped for well over half of the season, or about half of the season. Nobody really remembers that anymore. They just know Duncan Robinson is one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. It happens. Same thing with Ray Allen, right? But I do think it's also important to consider that within the context of having been on a slump for a few weeks, if you look at shooting splits, especially everything inside the three-point line with the threes having been down, most of his numbers are actually pretty similar to where they are the rest of his career. Upper paint, floaters, mid-range jumpers, all that kind of stuff. Where the dip has been in rim finishing. And it might look like, well, he's becoming a worse rim finisher, or his athleticism is declining as a result of that. But guess what? If Bam had an assisted dunk rate that he had 2 years ago, which was more than double what it is right now, and we'll just say conservatively that's adding half of a dunk per game, right? He'd be at or above his career high in rim finishing. So I call it less of a decline and more of a different context. You just have to look at the shots a guy is getting. Now, on top of all that, the offense is better when Bam is on the floor. Again, even with that slump, right? The number 15 offense equivalent when he's on the floor, and when he's off the floor, the offensive rating has been the equivalent of the number 27 offense. None of this is to make excuses for a slump when he doesn't shoot well. We just need to understand the context in which both slumps and heaters exist in. When Norm Powell or Tyler Hero make a ton of shots, or when they miss a ton of shots, we understand what is being asked of them. The same thing with the Khalil Ware, who to this point has been asked to be mostly a rim finisher or a play finisher. Lobs, putback dunks, spot up threes. He's only used 8 isolation possessions all year because that's not being asked of him. It's important to have these conversations because Bam's role is so fluid. He, year to year, sometimes even like month to month, it changes. He began just like Ware. He was a rim finisher, a play finisher, rim runner. Then it became clear he had more ball skills. It evolved. More playmaking duties, help free up shooters, help open up drives for the attackers. Then came an era where the team, which was searching for offense that could be more consistent and reliable in the postseason, where it gets slower and it's more mismatch-based and isolation-based, they evolved it to, hey, Bam, here's more isolations, here's more mismatches. Go find ways to create shots out of those because that's what the team needs. And then, now he needs to space the floor more often. So you're seeing more threes, more spacing, more outside, and a lot of the other stuff has gone away. He's been willing to sacrifice every single season, and I think people think of sacrificing as just giving up shots. It's giving up maybe what is working for you as a player, what is best for you and your numbers, role and system-wise. He's been willing to sacrifice that stuff just to make it better for the rest of the roster, to figure out what's best for everybody else on the team and maximize wins. And all of this, of course, comes while being an anchor for a top 10 defense just about every year, especially when he's on the floor. He's doing that this year. On that end, this year, the team is getting back to his greatest weapon, which is switching. Past 2 years, they've had to go away from switching. He might be one of the best switch bigs in the history of the league, and he certainly is in the past 10, 15, 20 years. They had to go away from it because the roster could not support switching, throughout the rotation. They had to run more drop coverage. Now, this year, he switched more pick and rolls than anybody in the league. He's allowing fewer than 0.9 points per switch. His usual wheelhouse, that's always going to be the case. He's that good. And when he's on the floor, the team is the equivalent of the number 3 defense in the league. Hey, he's not infallible. There have been a couple blow-by drives lately, but as we've seen with him over the years, those tend to be anomalies, and then you forget about them eventually because they stop happening. He has weaknesses, though, like any other player, and he goes through slumps like any other player. When you aren't playing well, and he's usually the first to admit when he's not playing well, you open yourself up for criticism. That's sports. Everybody understands the deal. It's fair game. But criticism should understand context. When you go see a horror movie, you don't sit there and think, why aren't there more jokes in this movie, right? I didn't go see Primate, the movie about a killer chimpanzee, wondering why this wasn't an Oscar-worthy script. I understood what kind of movie I was seeing when I bought the ticket. You don't go see Lord of the Rings wondering why there aren't more lightsabers in it. you know? You judge a movie on its own terms and what it intends to be, and players are a step beyond that because they're not just art and aesthetics. We have history with them. We have data on them. We can craft very specific profiles of not just what they intend to be and what is being asked of them, but we can craft profiles of who that player is. We can understand everything about their games in a lot of different ways. And Bam, we have an understanding that he is an impact player. He's a true number one defensive player. He carries your defense, and he's willing to fill any offensive role asked of him, even if that role doesn't specifically cater to who he is. And he's done all of these things we're talking about. He's done them in big playoff games, in long playoff series. Your mileages might vary on this, actually. But you know who he reminds me of is Kevin Garnett. The guy Bam looked up to as a kid and kind of wanted to be in many ways. And especially the version of Garnett when he got to Boston and KG had to figure out, everybody was figuring out how to fit in when Boston had so much talent there rather than when KG had to carry Minnesota on his shoulders where he basically had to play point guard half the time because that's what those teams needed. It's not a one-to-one comparison, and you know me by now. I'm not trying to say just because these numbers are these, this player is that. It's not what we're doing. You can just see how Adebayo's offensive profile, it's not that different from KG's, even though KG existed in an era where there were more post-ups and more mid-range shots, more like pick-and-pop mid-range center shots, which basically, you don't see nearly as many of those these days. So again, Bam's not a carbon copy of KG. KG's a Hall of Famer, first ballot, one of the best of all time. You can just see a little bit of Bam's game in KG. Similar roles, similar, what's being asked of them on defense, what's being asked of them on offense, and how they go about things. And look, this might not be popular with some of you, but Bam is also building a bit of a Hall of Fame resume himself. He needs to keep adding a few All-Star appearances, a couple more All-Defensive Team selections. But with the Olympic gold medals on top of all that and the playoff wins that he's already, put on his ledger, we could get to the end of his career, and a lot of us, many people will be saying, I think, this is a deserving, very unique, but deserving Hall of Fame resume. We'll see where it goes. And the last part about all this is what position Bam is supposed to play. Is he a 4 or a 5? And frankly, I do not really care. I do know the defense has always been very good with Adebayo at center, very good to excellent. And the rebounding has also been very good to excellent with Bam at center, which may be contrary to popular opinion, but we have years and years of data saying this, okay? I'm not opposed to him playing the 4. I think it can work. Bam and Khalil Ware together last year, the offense wasn't really working because the spacing was kind of mucked up, but the defense was very good. Statistically speaking, it hasn't been the same this year, mostly because the defense hasn't been as good with that combo on the floor. There are reasons for that, and that's a conversation for another day, but I do think it can work in the future. It's just you can understand why a coach like Eric Spoelstra, who's coaching for wins, coaching to maximize winning, you can understand why he would go away from a combo or a pair like that, just like he's gone away from double big combos in the past when he has tried them out sporadically, because he's coaching for wins and losses, and you have to have a little perspective on what's workable at the time, what's in front of you, and what you think can contribute to winning that game or that day. So, again, is he better as a 4 or a 5? I don't know. I don't care. I don't think it really matters all that much. Bam has clearly established that he will fit in to whatever is being asked of him to do. If the lineup around him is appropriate, I think it will work either way, and positions might be meaningless in the NBA today anyways. So you can have that conversation on your own. I just think it's important to understand that he has been very good, and the numbers have been very good across the board when he has played center. It can work as a 4 as well. Look, there you have it. That's a conversation I want to have about Bam. If you want to talk more about him, hit me up in the comments. I will be there. I have written a ton of words about Bam over the years. I'm sure there's a lot more coming, and I'm more than happy to continue the conversation about him. Just hit me up in the comments. I promise I will respond. I just think Bam has earned respect. And I think he's earned respect for how he's gotten about his career, how he treats other people, how he facilitates things for his teammates, how much he cares, how much he visibly cares about things. But when I say respect, I also mean players deserve respect of context. I think they deserve the respect of understanding who they are and what is being asked of them. And hopefully we've provided a little bit of that context today. So thanks for joining for another episode of After the Buzzer. I am your host, Couper Moorhead. It's been great spending time with you. Until next time, take care.